New developments in the battle over the state's ban on abortion.
You have to make expectant mothers and women feel comfortable that if they're in a situation where their life is on the line, that they will be properly treated.
Why Texas doctors may soon get new guidance on when exceptions to the ban are allowed. One of the state's biggest names in medical marijuana is calling for more regulation. What's behind the growing concern about cannabis-based products and how it could change what you can legally buy in Texas. A new school safety law dramatically expanded security requirements on campuses across Texas, but some districts are still having trouble meeting those standards.
This is essentially an unfunded mandate, so we had to find the capacity within our budget to afford this.
We look closer at the different steps districts are taking to make sure students stay safe at school.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Will Dupree. Josh Hinkle is on assignment. The Texas Medical Board is meeting next week to discuss clarifying what counts as medical exemption to the state's abortion restrictions. It comes after two high-profile lawsuits highlighted stories of Texas women who had life-threatening pregnancy complications but were denied treatment. Monica Madden spoke to the lobbyists who pushed the board to this point.
It should be personal to any woman.
After the Texas Supreme Court rejected Kate Cox's ask to end her non-viable pregnancy in her home state, lobbyist couple Amy and Steve Bresnan felt compelled to act on their own accord.
We did not want the circularity that's created by one branch of government asking the other branch of government to do its job. And meanwhile, these flesh and blood human beings and physicians and their patients are caught in the circle.
After their January petition, the Bresnans were surprised to learn the Texas Medical Board would consider clarifying the exceptions language in a meeting next Friday.
I think it's a confluence of things coming together.
Especially since the law's author, Republican Senator Brian Hughes, wrote the board about this almost 2 years ago. Hughes says their intent was never to hurt expecting moms facing severe complications.
Every medical provider should know if a woman has a life-threatening condition, she must be treated. Texas law does not stand in the way of that.
But physicians in Texas have voiced fear of performing an abortion in the state.
I've always tried to practice within the standards of care, and I don't want to risk my freedom, my livelihood.
The law does not say that the physician has to wait until the condition gets so bad that the mother is in an emergent situation. The law does not require that.
Doctors who violate Texas abortion law could face criminal charges, lose their license, or face fines north of $100,000. The Bresnans are hoping possible changes will help women like Kate Cox going forward.
This is, in my opinion, a very pro-life move. It's one thing to be anti-abortion, and it's another thing to be anti-mother.
Monica is joining us now. Monica, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate that.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You know, it would seem that clarifying some of these exceptions for the abortion ban would have happened already. Why is this happening now?
I think there's a couple of reasons, Will. A lot of this has been delayed because of the pending litigation from Amanda Zarowski, of course, Kate Cox's case as well. And the Texas Medical Board has been hesitant to make any action on that. My sources say because of the ongoing litigation. One has to speculate if it was a combination of all of these lawsuits that got national attention. Of course, we've seen, President Biden highlighting the stories of Kate Cox and Amanda Zarowski recently. So a lot of people are really focused on this and, on that national stage. And even Senator Brian Hughes, the Republican author of the abortion restrictions law, had wrote the Texas Medical Board back in 2022 asking them to add some of these clarifications. So the lobbyists I spoke to, Amy and Steve Bresnan, were not sure why exactly it was their petition that finally got the Texas Medical Board to start the process of clarifying this. We don't know what will happen, of course, but they think that it's perhaps a compilation of all of those things combined.
I'm wondering how this will all affect some of the cases that are going through courts right now particularly about these exemptions for the abortion ban. Let's talk about that case with Amanda Zarowski and those other women in Texas. Where does that case stand?
I think that's a really good question to ask, Will, because that case is still pending before the Texas Supreme Court. They're waiting for an opinion. And specifically in their lawsuit, what they're asked for the courts is to write clarification in the law that says in cases of, similar ones to these women where they have these medical conditions that are presenting a risk to themselves eventually, that, where their fetus is non-viable and there's no chance of survival, they want to be able to get abortions in Texas under those circumstances and are wanting the justices to clarify the law. But what we've heard from, Republican supporters of the law is it's not up to the judicial branch to clarify the law. We made it clear, that's what Republicans have defended it as, and therefore, if there are going to be clarifications, it needs to come from the Texas Medical Board. So, hypothetically, if the Texas Medical Board provides the clarifications that they are needing and changes the guidance for other physicians, it very well could settle one of the main issues in this lawsuit. I haven't spoken to the lawyers yet, though, so we'll have to see how they would proceed if this changes the game for them.
So looking ahead to next week, the Texas Medical Board is going to meet. I know you'll be covering that very closely. What action could we expect to come from that?
I think the fact that they're considering this is just a significant point in and of itself. So what they will be doing there is proposing draft language of what exactly exceptions will we carve out. Of course, health conditions are complicated and nuanced. There's so many different things that someone can experience when they are going through a pregnancy, different types of complications. So there's a wide umbrella of different terminology they have to include to make sure that no woman who is possibly going to experience a life-threatening condition will be left out of these exceptions. Because again, what Senator Hughes has told me is the goal is to make sure that we're protecting life, including the mother. So they're going to have to come up with a carefully drafted language, approve that, and then they'll issue that guidance out to their physicians. But there is a 30-day period of public comment where they invite the public to weigh in on this before it becomes final.
So many more steps to go. All right, Monica Madden, thank you for your reporting and for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Will.
A federal appeals court upheld a Texas law requiring minors to have parental permission to get birth control. The ruling affects federally funded clinics that provide contraceptives to minors. The Biden administration argued the law went against a federally funded pregnancy health program known as Title X. However, the decision from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals found that empowering parents to consent to teens receiving contraceptives did not go against the federal law. It is unclear if the administration will appeal this ruling. More cannabis-based products hit the market in Texas, and not all of them are legal. Why it's leading to new calls for regulation from people you might not expect. Our investigation uncovers gaps in the state's do not hire registries. Cracks in the system led to the hiring of a tutor while he was being investigated for misconduct. Why a potential fix is not being used yet. Some Texas schools are struggling to meet new school safety requirements. How different districts are finding solutions to keep students safe on campus. A sweeping school safety law took effect last September, dramatically expanding security requirements on every campus. However, some districts are still having trouble meeting those standards. On Monday, the Texas Attorney General issued some more guidance on how districts can comply with the law as some struggle to find money in their budgets. Our Ryan Chandler looks at how some schools are adapting to this new normal.
An officer pinning ceremony in West Austin's Eanes ISD, ushering in a new era of school security in the age of school shootings.
We hope that never happens at one of our campuses, but if it does, we're ready for it.
New state law requires every school district to implement armed security officers on every campus every school day.
This is essentially an unfunded mandate, so we had to find the capacity within our budget to afford this.
House Bill 3 bumped the school safety allotment by just 28 cents per student and $15,000 per campus. But the armed officer requirement alone can cost $60,000 to $100,000 per campus per officer. So how well your child's school is complying probably depends on how big and how rich your district is. Eanes ISD, here in Austin's wealthy suburbs, was able to establish their very own police force. and they drive Teslas. Others have to get more creative.
We're here for our kids. We want to make sure that they're safe inside these schools.
In Harlingen, schools are partnering with homegrown watchdogs, the dads.
We want to bring that community engagement into our campus and spread awareness to our students that education is very important.
Districts without the money or staffing to hire officers can instead train and arm school employees. The Texas Education Agency says they don't track how many districts have decided to do that.
Not only do we have to comply with the new law and the new requirement, but we have to do that in light of significant budget deficits that everybody is facing. Forces us to be very creative and very resourceful.
Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
In addition to guidance on how to comply with that school safety law, the Attorney General's office also announced it's making training resources available for school security officers. That includes a hyper-realistic virtual training simulator to help officers prepare to respond to a school shooting. A Texas tutor hired by a high school while a state agency was investigating him amid accusations of sexual misconduct. Now a state lawmaker is calling for change.
You just have a moral responsibility to make sure our children are as safe as possible.
What our investigation found about gaps in the state's do not hire registries. One of the state's biggest names in medical marijuana is calling for more regulation. What's behind the growing concern about cannabis-based products and how it could change what you can legally buy in Texas.
We're going to pursue every one of these until the system is as foolproof as it can be.
A lawmaker promises to act after our investigation reveals a former juvenile corrections officer worked inside a Central Texas high school while a state agency was investigating him for accusations of sexual misconduct. The state has do not hire registries designed to prevent things like this from happening. But investigative reporter Kelly Wiley found blind spots and delays across that system.
We're going to call up the last and final panel, Isaiah Smith.
My name is Isaiah Smith. I represent myself, my credentials. I am, I guess, a student leader. I start with that agency on the 15th at one of their secure facilities at Giddings.
Days before Isaiah Smith started officially working as a corrections officer at a juvenile detention facility, he was testifying before the Texas Legislature about issues he saw there as a volunteer.
I have volunteered with the agency for around 1 year and 2 months.
Smith's employment at Giddings State School began in August of 2022. But within 2 months of working for the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, he was fired. According to TJJD records, while on duty, Smith turned off his body camera. A young boy there reported Smith touched him inappropriately. The agency began an investigation. Smith was flagged in the agency's statewide database, warning every county juvenile facility in the state. But records show nearly a year later, as that investigation continued, Smith began working as a tutor for the nonprofit Austin Partners in Education, assigned to Aikens High School. Soon after, Austin ISD police say a student in the program told them Smith touched him inappropriately. Smith is now in Travis County Jail, facing a charge of indecency with the child over the report out of Aikens. The nonprofit has not answered all our questions, including if Smith disclosed his past or the allegations he was facing before being hired as a tutor. But if Smith did not share those details, we learned there's no way the nonprofit would have known. The database where TJJD flagged Smith is only accessible to other county juvenile facilities in the state. The Texas Education Agency, public schools, and educational nonprofits don't have access.
Look, we're talking about the safety of kids. We're talking about, these type of incidences. Once somebody becomes a perpetrator of this, they just continue and they don't stop. That's when I saw the story, I said I had to act. And I had to act by asking the two agency heads, what happened here?
In last year's regular legislative session at the Capitol,
Senate Bill 1849.
Lawmakers, including Houston Republican Senator Paul Bettencourt, passed a bill requiring the Department of Information Resources to create one large shared search engine, combining data about abuse and neglect findings from all child-serving state agencies, including TJJD, TEA, the Department of Family and Protective Services, and Health and Human Services. In response to the letter from Senator Paul Bettencourt, sparked by KXAN's reporting, TJJD and TEA leaders pointed out that search engine is still being designed and developed more than 6 months after the bill requiring it became law. The Texas Department of Information Resources, tasked with building this database, tells KXAN it's now only in the assessment and design phases. The agency said the current estimated completion date is the end of 2024, but that is difficult to be precise at this stage of the process. Are you worried about what happens in the meantime?
Whenever there's an issue, in my mind, what gets measured gets fixed. There's a failure here, no question. And this person should have never been around young people ever again in their life.
Both TEA and TJJD point out Isaiah Smith was hired as a tutor at Aikens before the bill to make a statewide search engine became law. TJJD says it's now going back to older cases like his to include in the data. But until then, agencies and schools will have to reach out for reference checks individually. Aside from TJJD's database, TEA has one of their own, and we learned Smith is not listed in their do not hire registry. In a response letter to Senator Bettencourt, Commissioner Morath pointed out a gap in the law that does not require districts to report incidents to TEA if the allegations are against a contractor like Smith, who is not a district employee. Morath said his agency cannot compel districts to report contractors.
Notice the language the commissioner uses is very specific. He can't compel them. Well, the school district should be reporting it anyway, and this problem will be fixed one way or the other by the next legislative session.
Right now, Smith is in Travis County Jail. He was indicted in Lee County for indecency with a child and improper sexual activity with the person in custody. Those are both related to the report from his time as a corrections officer at Giddings State School. He is facing one charge of indecency with the child out of Travis County. We did reach out to his lawyers and to him. Smith wrote us a letter addressing some of the allegations against him. He told us he had a settlement with TJJD erasing his disciplinary record. The agency told us that wasn't quite true. In a statement, they said there was a mediation right after Smith was terminated. He was allowed to resign, but the agency says Smith was still flagged in its database, and it did not stop their investigators from looking into the alleged sexual misconduct. You can read this story and any updates we receive in this week's State of Texas story right now on our website.
Calls to poison control fuel new concern about cannabis-based products in Texas.
There is some bathtub gin out there, and it's going to be a while until we get to the Coors and Budweiser of cannabis.
Why some of the state's biggest supporters of medical marijuana are calling on lawmakers to create new regulations. The CEO of the state's largest medical cannabis distributor is calling on Texas leaders to regulate the state's CBD market. That market includes popular products derived from hemp like Delta-8 and Delta-9 THC. The group cites a growing number of drug-related offenses in schools and more young patients involved in calls to the Texas Poison Center Network. But as our Monica Madden reports, it will be difficult to get changes in place.
It was really scary, and I was kind of going through my head, did I just have a seizure?
Sophie Bluestein was planning on having a fun night at a concert when she took a Delta-9 edible that she bought legally in Texas. Delta-9 is a chemical in cannabis and hemp plants, which can create the same high feeling users get from marijuana.
All of a sudden had the feeling where your eyes go black and you are going to fall down in the matter of a snap of fingers. I was on the ground.
She fainted twice and got on-site medical care.
I've heard this has happened to others, so it's pretty concerning.
Stories like Bluestein's are part of why some cannabis distributors want to see more regulations of the hemp market in Texas.
We need some common sense regulation around it.
Texas Original CEO Nico Richardson operates under the state's medical marijuana program, which is regulated by Texas DPS.
They tour our facility once a month. We have to test every single batch that goes through.
He would benefit from regulations on the hemp market, but says there are major public safety concerns.
If we want to have an open recreational market in Texas, I think we should legalize that in the appropriate way and have the appropriate testing measures and appropriate age gating.
Legal experts say there will need to be an overhaul in federal and state laws in order to create a safe market.
There is some bathtub gin out there, and it's going to be a while until we get to the Coors and Budweiser of cannabis.
Monica Madden, State of Texas.
The FDA has warned that some manufacturers might be using unsafe chemicals to convert CBD into Delta-8 and Delta-9. When it comes to regulations, Texas lawmakers will not be able to make changes until they go back in session next year. But there is a chance Congress could add some regulations. They are currently negotiating changes to the Farm Bill. That Farm Bill was first passed in 2018. It authorized the production of hemp and let hemp farmers participate in USDA farm programs. A key part of that was a rule removing hemp and hemp seeds from the Drug Enforcement Administration's list of controlled substances. The bill also directed the Department of Agriculture to issue regulations and guidance for the production of hemp. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Will Dupree. We'll be back next week to have an updated look at Texas politics.